Hello everyone. So today is 25th of July and it is that day on which every 5 years the new President of India takes oath. So 25th of July is a date that has been etched in history since 1977 because on this date all the presidents of India have taken oath. And today the new President of India, Ms. Draupadi Murmu, took oath as the President of India. Hello and welcome to Hitbullseye. My name is Manish and we will discuss everything there is to know about the President of India. The highest position in the constitutional order in this country and also known as the first citizen of India. And it is fortunate and it is a testimony to the democratic credentials of this country that a woman who is born in a very poor family comes from a tribal background and has seen various various steps on her career, from being a counselor to being a teacher to being a clerk in a government department to being a minister, a governor, and finally adorning the highest constitutional office of the country. So that is something that we will be discussing about. Also in detail we'll have a look at how the president is elected, how the president is impeached, how the president commands the entire military of the country, and some other powers of the president. So stay tuned. Starting with, of course, what happened today. So this photograph is of Ms. Murmu being administered oath by none other than the Chief Justice of India, Mr. N.V. Ramana. So that itself should get imprinted in your mind because it's a very common question being asked in exams, that who administers oath of office to the President of India. So it is the Chief Justice of India who administers oath of office to the President of India. And the logic behind that is that the President is the head of the Union Executive and the CJI is the head of the Union Judiciary. So if we talk about the balance of powers among the three organs of the state, it is prudent that the head of one organ administers oath to the head of another organ, and also vice versa. The CJI is administered oath by the President of India. So it works both ways. So she has become the 15th President of India. Apparently there is a lot of confusion around this particular thing, that whether she is the 15th President of India or the 16th President of India. So to clear the air, she is the 15th President of India, but the elections were the 16th elections, simply for the reason that the first President of India remained in office for 2 terms. So Dr. Rajendra Prasad, who was the first President of India, remained in office for 2 terms, and hence he was only the first president even in the second term. That means there are 16 elections but 15 presidents, because one president was elected twice, and that was Dr. Rajendra Prasad. So you should not get confused. She is the 15th president winning the 16th presidential election, and CJI Shri N.V. Ramana administered the oath of office to her in accordance with the provisions of the Constitution. Discussing some facts about Ms. Murmu. So as I told you, she is a scheduled tribe which is being talked about a lot. So she belongs to the Santhal tribe of Odisha. These are really important facts that you should keep in mind. So she belongs to a Santhal tribe from Odisha, and she was the governor of Jharkhand. Again, people confuse whether she belongs to Jharkhand or to Odisha. She originally is a native of Odisha, but she was the governor of Jharkhand. It is not mandatory under the Indian Constitution that a governor of a state has to belong to that particular state, and that's why she was born and brought up in Odisha, belongs to the Santhal tribe of Odisha, but served as the governor of Jharkhand. And there is a unique distinction in her name. Ever since Jharkhand was created in the year 2000, she is the only governor to complete an entire 5-year tenure as the Jharkhand governor. Another feather up her sleeve, she has now become the President of India. Also, she is the second woman to adorn this particular position after Pratibha Devi Singh Patil. So Pratibha Patil was the first woman to become the President of India, and she remained in office from 2007 till 2012. So she is the second woman and the first tribal to be on the particular designation. Right, now talking about the powers of the President of India or some other provisions about the President of India. First, Article 53 of the Constitution talks about the President of India, that there shall be a President of India in whom all the executive power shall rest. The executive power of the Union shall rest in the President, who shall exercise the executive power directly or through officers subordinate to him. That means the entire executive power of the Union rests in the President. That is one thing that you should know. She is the first citizen of India and has first position under the warrant of precedence. There is a warrant of precedence and President enjoys the first position, second enjoyed by the Vice President, and in that order. He is the head of state and the nominal head of the Union Executive. Now the word nominal has a lot of significance over here, because in reality, in practical terms, the entire power of the Union vests in the Prime Minister. But the President theoretically exercises all those powers. So theoretically, the Constitution gives all the powers to the President, but in reality, they are exercised by the Prime Minister. So the nominal head of the Union Executive is President, and the real head of the Union Executive is the Prime Minister. What is the eligibility to become the President of India? Of course, he or she must be a citizen of India. So a foreigner is not allowed to adorn this post. Minimum 35 years of age. Then qualified for election as a member of the House of the People, in other words, the Lok Sabha. It does not mean that she should be a member of Lok Sabha. It just means that she should be eligible to become a member of Lok Sabha, because when you say this, then a lot many other conditionalities are already covered in this particular point, because there is a long list of requirements that needs to be fulfilled if someone wants to contest the elections to the Lok Sabha, and all those conditions are automatically fulfilled if this particular condition is put here and is eligible for re-election, and there is no bar on the number of times on which a person can become the President of India. So it's a coincidence that no person has enjoyed 2 tenures except Dr. Rajendra Prasad, but it does not mean that there is a term bar. As opposed to this, in United States of America, there is a term bar on the President. So a single person cannot become the President for more than 2 terms. But in India, there is no such limit. A person can become a President for n number of times. There is no limitation on that. The Constitution does not put any limitation on that front. As far as the election of the President is concerned, in one of the previous videos, we have discussed in detail the methodology of election of the President. So I will not be completing that in detail because it's quite a technical topic. So you can watch that video, on this particular channel also. But to give you a brief about that, I'll tell you who all take part in the election of the President. So it is an indirect election. That means people like you and me, the regular citizens of the country, they do not get to vote for the President. So who votes? There's a specific electoral college that consists of the MLAs of all the states and the MPs of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. So the elected members of both the houses of Parliament participate. Only the elected members, the nominated members, cannot vote. So there are 12 nominated members in the Rajya Sabha who cannot vote, and there are 2 nominated members in the Lok Sabha who cannot vote. Although now this provision of 2 Lok Sabha members has been done away with through 104th Constitution Amendment Act. So earlier there were 2 members in the Lok Sabha who were nominated by the President from the Anglo-Indian community, but now this provision is no longer available. So there are 12 members in Rajya Sabha who are nominated by the President from the fields of art, science, literature and social service. They also cannot vote for the President. Logic being that since they have been nominated by the President, they cannot vote for the President. So it's, you can say in a way, principle of natural justice being protected here. But all other elected members can nonetheless vote. Other than that, the elected members of the legislative assemblies of states, they can vote. So in total, there are 28 states in India right now. So all the MLAs of those states can vote in the presidential election. And through the 70th Constitutional Amendment Act, Delhi and Puducherry, the 2 UTs having legislative assemblies, also got the right to vote for the President. And since 2019, when J&K became a union territory with a legislative assembly, its assembly has also been added, but it could not vote this time because since There is no assembly right now there, right? It's a UT, but assembly has not been constituted. There was delimitation exercise going on, and the elections have not been held. So once the elections are held, only then the J&K assembly will also be participating in the presidential elections. And if there is any dispute regarding the presidential election, the Supreme Court has the original as well as exclusive jurisdiction to decide the matter. An additional point here is that the election of the president cannot be challenged on the ground of inadequacy of electoral college. Let's say if someone challenges the presidential election of this time, saying that since the Jammu and Kashmir assembly did not participate in the election, the electoral college was not was not complete, but on that ground it cannot be challenged, right? It is not a valid ground for challenging. Then the method of election is proportional representation by single transferable vote. In short, it means that the total votes cast by the states and the total votes cast by the center should be equal. Now, how is that possible when there are approximately 4,200 MLAs and only about 776 MPs? Now, how is that possible? So for that, there is a specific formula through which the value of votes of these people are counted, and then they are equated with each other. So at the end, the total value of votes comes out to be approximately 5,45,000 approximately for the MLAs, and similarly for the MPs. So at the end, approximately 10,80,000 votes or value of votes is there, and anyone who gets 50% or more votes becomes the President of India, which Ms. Murmu has got. And another fact that you should know is that in total 4,701 members voted for the president this time, all the MPs and MLAs combined, and out of that Ms. Murmu and Mr. Sinha. So Mr. Sinha got 1,877 votes, whereas Ms. Murmu got 2,824 votes. So these were the total votes that they got, MPs and MLAs combined, and as you can see, her votes were about more than 2/3 of the total votes, and in value of votes she was way ahead. So as far as value of votes is concerned, she got approximately 6,50,000 votes, and Mr. Sinha got approximately 3 lakh votes, right? So she has won by a thumping margin, because the BJP, which was the proposing party for Ms. Murmu, had adequate numbers in the parliament as well as in majority of state legislative assemblies led by Uttar Pradesh. So this is how the elections are held, the votes are counted, and once a person becomes a president, there are certain conditions that need to be satisfied. Right, there are certain conditions that need to be satisfied. First of all, to become the president, a person should not be, so these are some things that have to be kept in mind, should not be an MP or MLA or MLC. Now, at the time of contesting of election, a person can be on that designation, but once the person gets elected, he cannot remain on any of these positions. Second, shall not hold any office of profit. Now, there is a detailed judgment of various courts explaining what is the office of profit. So the person should not be holding any office of profit that interferes with, the functioning of this particular designation. The person is entitled without payment of rent the use of his official residences. There is Rashtrapati Bhavan in New Delhi, then there is a President's Estate in Shimla, and there is another President's Estate in South India. So to all these residences, the president can use without payment of rent. Monthly salary right now is rupees 5 lakh, which is exempted from the income tax. Emoluments and allowances of the president cannot be diminished during his term in office. So these are some really general facts that you should get to know. The term of office is 5 years, right? Quite easy it is. Oath is by Chief Justice of India, as we have seen in the first the first picture. If the president has to resign, he resigns to the vice president. This is something that you should never confuse with. Generally, the person who administers oath of office to a designation also accepts the resignation, but that is not always the case. For example, in this case, the oath is by the CJI, but if the president is to resign, he or she resigns to the vice president. Then is eligible for re-election any number of times, and even after the expiry of his term, the president may continue to be in her post until the next president gets elected. So it's not like if 5 years are completed, the person has to necessarily tender resignation. If due to certain reason the elections have not been conducted, let's say there is an emergency or something like that, then the incumbent can continue to be in office until the successor takes office. And there is a procedure to remove the President of India from his office for violation of the Constitution. There is only one ground on which you can remove the President, and that is if she violates the Constitution. There is no other ground. Generally, for most of the constitutional authorities, there are two grounds, that is proved misbehavior and incapacity. Generally, these are the two grounds on which any constitutional authority can be removed from office. But for the President of India, none of these grounds is there. There is only one ground: if she violates the Constitution of India, expressly violates the Constitution. Only then the President can be impeached. And for your information, no President has been removed in India till now, and even proceedings have not been instituted. So that means this procedure has never been used in Indian history, which is quite a graceful thing to say. So if we talk about the impeachment procedure is quite complicated. To explain it to you in a simple form, the proposal has to be passed by the special majority in both the houses of parliament separately. And here special majority means 2/3 of the total strength of the house, right? So irrespective of vacancies, by-elections or any other factor, the total strength of the parliament, each house separately, the 2/3 of that strength needs to vote to remove the president. And after that, when both the houses pass it and the president has got the right to explain herself in the second house, then the president is removed. So it's quite a difficult procedure, so that the president cannot be removed easily, and it is very unlikely that the government will have 2/3 majority in both the houses of parliament, which is mandatory to remove the president. And during the procedure, of course, in the second house, the president gets the right to present her case before a specific panel that consists of judges as well. So if the judges find them innocent, then the voting of course will not succeed and the president will remain in her seat. So it's a difficult procedure, contains votes by both the houses, and it has never been done in Indian history. Finally, talking about the powers of the president, quite extensive powers of the president, ranging from administrative to military powers, legislative, judicial, veto, emergency, diplomatic and executive powers. There are so many powers that the President of India enjoys. Let me run you through all these powers one by one very quickly. Administrative powers include the powers of appointing various officials. So right from the Prime Minister to the Union Ministers, the CAG, the members and chairpersons of various commissions like the Union Public Service Commission, the National Commissions for Scheduled Castes, Scheduled Tribes, Backward Classes, and so many other officials, they are appointed in the name of the President. The signatures of the President are necessary to effect all these appointments. Other than that, the new All India Service Officers get the appointment letter signed by the President, and all the armed forces officers also get their appointment letters that are signed by the President. So it's the administrative authority, and the President also has the power to remove all of them under his seal and signature. As far as military powers are concerned, you must have noticed that the President is always guided or guarded by the armed forces personnel. So this is something that not even the Prime Minister enjoys. And the reason is that the President of India is the supreme commander of the armed forces, and that's why she's always surrounded by the armed forces personnel, right? So supreme commander of the armed forces and has the power to declare war and peace. National emergency on the grounds of war, external aggression can be declared by the President. However, the parliamentary approval is mandatory, and the parliament has the power to regulate the exercise of such powers. This is a kind of a check placed on the power of the president. Legislative powers are aplenty, right? And a bill does not become an act unless it is signed by the president. That is one of the most basic requirements that are required to make a law. The president has to sign it. The president nominates 12 members to the Rajya Sabha and 2 members to the Lok Sabha, a provision that has now been done away with, right? Through 104th Amendment, the president no longer nominates 2 members from the Anglo-Indian community to the Lok Sabha. However, he still nominates 12 members to the Rajya Sabha. He can dissolve the Lok Sabha, he can summon the houses of parliament, he can address either house separately or both the houses jointly. A bill into an act is converted only when the president signs it. Otherwise, no bill can become an act. And certain reports are presented to the parliament by the president. For example, the reports of the Union Public Service Commission, all the national commissions for the scheduled caste, scheduled tribes and backward classes, all their reports are presented to the parliament by the president. And a president can promulgate ordinances under Article 123. Ordinances, it's like a temporary law. So let's say a parliament is not in session. Then an emergency situation, a law is needed. Then the president can promulgate an ordinance which shall remain in force for about 6 months, and within that time it has to be passed by both the houses of parliament. So that is the power that is there with the president. He can promulgate an emergency law without even the approval of the parliament. That is the extent to which power has been provided to the President of India. Another set of powers that is quite remains in news whenever we talk about mercy petition of the convicts is judicial powers. Now in judicial powers, there is a certain procedure that we follow in India under the rule of law that a lower court pronounces a verdict against a particular accused, and then if the court grants some punishment, let's say capital punishment, then the appellant goes into the High Court. If the punishment is maintained there, then the appellant goes to the Supreme Court. But if even the Supreme Court maintains capital punishment, then the convict has an option to file a mercy petition directly with the President of India, and the President, by simply signing on a letter, can entirely pardon that particular convict. Although this is used very sparingly, but a lot of mercy petitions keep pending with the President of India. So the President has the power to do all these things. The President can pardon, that means completely pardon an accused, can temporarily suspend the sentence of someone, can award lesser sentence, can reduce the amount of sentence, or can change one punishment to another. Let's say a person was having capital punishment, it can be changed to life imprisonment or something like that. But all these powers are also there with the governors of the states. But as far as the president is concerned, these powers are with the president in 3 special circumstances. One, in case of capital punishment. Second, in case of a court martial. So in case of a court martial, the convict cannot appeal to the governor, can only appeal to the president because she is the head of the armed forces. And in case the punishment is prescribed under a union-made law. So this quite remains in controversy because many a time it happens that the mercy petition remains pending with the President of India for quite a long amount of time. We have seen about a couple of months ago, the Rajiv Gandhi assassination case convict A.G. Perarivalan was released by the Supreme Court, and one of the reasons for his release was that the mercy petition was pending with the President for a very long time. Had it been disposed of at an apt time, then perhaps things would have been different. But this is something that that always remains in news, and it is quite a controversial topic, so to say. Then comes the veto powers of the president, which are exercised not every now and then, quite sparingly, but veto power means that when a bill goes to the president for assent after being passed by both the houses of parliament, then there are certain options with the president that she can exercise instead of choosing to sign that particular bill. So one is the absolute veto. under which the president can withhold that bill for some time without signing it. Then there is suspensive veto, where if the president does not agree with a particular provision of the bill, he can send that bill back to the House, and then the House will have to send it back, and the second time it is binding on the president to sign over it. This is called suspensive veto. Then there is pocket veto. This is the most important power that the president has, but something that the presidents of India since independence have exercised quite sparingly. It's just on a couple of instances I can remember, a couple or three circumstances where the president has exercised pocket veto. That means the president just does not take any decision on the bill, and it keeps lingering on for indefinite amount of time. Right? So these are certain things in veto. Then comes the emergency powers, another point of controversy, but there are three types of emergencies that the Constitution of India prescribes. One is the national emergency, one is the state emergency, and one is the financial emergency. And to proclaim all these three types of emergencies is the privilege or is the prerogative of the President of India. So under Article 352, the national emergency, under Article 356, the state emergency, and under Article 360, the financial emergency can be imposed by the President by issuing a notification. Article 352 has been imposed in India about 3 times till now, 2 times external emergency during wars and once internal emergency. State emergency has been imposed over 100 times in India since independence, and financial emergency has never been imposed till now. Diplomatic powers, somewhat similar to the administrative powers, where the ambassadors, high commissioners, plenipotentiaries of other countries are appointed, received and sent by the President of India as a diplomatic gesture to other countries. And all the international treaties and conventions are negotiated and signed in the name of the President of India, being the head of the Union Executive. Right? Finally, there are certain executive powers that are there with the President. So for example, the President is the head of the government. So the President can seek any information from the Prime Minister about which bills are going to be introduced in the Parliament, which bills are being sent to the President, what the government is doing in all the spheres. So the President has the power to seek all this information from the Prime Minister and the Union Council of Ministers, and that comes under the executive domain of the President. Now, having looked at all these powers, it gives us a perception that perhaps President has a lot of powers, or perhaps the President is the most important or the most powerful position under the government of India. But by reading between the lines, by taking a closer look at the constitutional provisions, we will realize that the Constitution itself mandates that all these powers, or a majority of these powers, can be exercised by the President only on the advice of the Union Council of Ministers headed by the Prime Minister. The Supreme Court also has in various judgments since independence reiterated this particular thing, that the President has all these powers but cannot exercise them in her own discretion. And her exercise of these powers is dependent upon the advice tendered by the Union Council of Ministers headed by the Prime Minister. And it is there that the crux of the matter lies. So in reality, all these powers that we have discussed are actually exercised by the Prime Minister of India, but in the name of the President. But does it mean that the President does not do anything? He is the head of the state and not the head of the government. He is the nominal head, because the real head is the Prime Minister, and it is the most exalted office of India. It's the most respectable, it is the most you can say regal, and the most respectable institution in the government, and is not necessarily a rubber stamp. It basically depends upon the person who gets to occupy this particular position. I still remember the last time when President Kovind was elected. So his predecessor was President Pranab Mukherjee. And when President Pranab Mukherjee was leaving the office, so in his farewell speech, he used these beautiful words that, at a particular point of time in one's life, when person gets above politics, he agrees to disagree. And that is a defining phase. When you agree to disagree, that is when you get above politics, and that is when you can adorn an office like a governor or that of a president. And that is what we expect from the new president as well. The president is not necessarily a rubber stamp. There are certain situations where the president's personal discretion matters. For example, if after the elections there is a hung parliament, let's say no single party or a single coalition commands majority in the Lok Sabha. This kind of a situation has arisen multiple times in India. So we know that to become Prime Minister, out of the 543 seats in Lok Sabha, 272 MPs need to be there, and only then that person, the leader of that party or that coalition, becomes a Prime Minister. What if no single party or coalition commands that number? In that case, it is the president's discretion to decide whom to invite to make the government. And this situation has arisen, multiple times in India's polity. It is only for the last two elections that we have been seeing a single party majority in the Lok Sabha. Before that, for over 30 years, we did not see any single party majority. Like since 1984 elections, we have not seen till 2014 any single party government at the center. In all those situations, it was the president who had a discretion to decide the prime minister based on the numbers that each of the parties had. Also, in the appointment of prime minister, when the prime minister suddenly dies in office, or when the prime minister resigns, or when in case of hung parliament again, who gets to become the prime minister is the prerogative of the president, and the president has to take that decision keeping in mind n number of circumstances, and it is there that the discretion of the president lies. Also, in some cases, in disposal of mercy petitions, right, in disposal of mercy petitions and in exercising pocket veto or other types of veto, it is in these particular circumstances that the president can actually have, can exercise the power of her office. But it is not a confrontationist office. It is supposed to be aiding the government, aiding and advising the government in where, the areas of improvement actually. And the president acts as, the spokesman of the government, because every year when there is a first session of the parliament in every new year, then the president addresses the houses and gets to communicate the agenda of the government for the upcoming year. So in that way, the president is heading the government on the behalf of the prime minister and the council of ministers. So that is the entire situation of the office of the president. There are certain important facts additionally that you should know. So Dr. Rajendra Prasad was the first president of India. Then V.V. Giri was the only president so far who won the election as an independent candidate in 1969. The only person to become the president of India as an independent candidate was V.V. Giri. Then Neelam Sanjeeva Reddy remains the only president who was elected unopposed in 1977. That means all the parties, supported his candidature, so there was no need for him to there was no opposition basically. And it was in 1977 that the 25th July as a date got etched in history, because before that Rajendra Prasad took oath on 26th of January 1950 on the Republic Day. So actually every year it should be on 26th of January that the new president should take oath. But that sequence was broken because one of the presidents died in office, and due to that there were midterm elections, and the oath taken by Mr. Neelam Sanjeeva Reddy was on 25th of July 1977. And since then, this tradition has been going on that on 25th of July every year, every 5 years, the new president of India takes oath. So that is all about the president of India. The president, not actually a rubber stamp, has all these powers, and under certain circumstances, depending upon the individual personality of the person, can exercise as many powers as she can. And we have great hopes from Ms. Draupadi Murmu, coming from a really, really humble background, economically, socially, and politically. So it would be really great to see the Amrit Kal that the government says is from the 75th year of independence till the 100th year of independence, that is from 2022 till 2047. India is in a transitioning phase where it will be going from a developing economy to a developed economy. And in her speech also today, she has cited that it's the victory for all those 10 crore tribals, who she represents in the Rashtrapati Bhavan. So we have great hopes from Ms. Murmu, and it remains to be seen how she transforms the office in her own different persona. With that hope, I take leave from you. Thank you so much and take care.